Hi guys, it's Danny here and welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Ben Lewis and Dan Hancock. Now today's guest, Ross Worswick, you might know him from founding the Couture Club fashion brand. In this conversation we don't just discuss business and fashion, but we talk about the importance of checking up on your mates, the importance of understanding that you're a work in progress and you can learn on the job, and a whole other range of topics. So this conversation is really, really powerful and we just hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed having it.
Okay, guys, a massive welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast. Today we are joined by Ross Worswick.
That's correct.
There we go. You all know him as the founder of the Couture Club, one of the biggest clothing brands within the UK. Ross, a massive thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, I'm buzzing for this.
I am so excited for this.
Too. Really looking forward to this episode. Ross, we obviously know your story well, but for anyone else listening, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you came about doing what you do?
Yeah, so I started the Couture Club in 2015, and at the time, with my business partner Scott Sashua, at the time we literally had £5,000, that was it, and I was getting sent clothes from other companies and nothing was really, the quality wasn't really that good. There wasn't really many competitors out there at the time, and I knew that there was definitely a market for affordable but luxury clothing, like where the quality was good and everything was decent. So I basically just spent a year trying to find factories that could make clothes, and we started the business with literally one t-shirt in 3 colours, and then kind of just started promoting it ourselves and promoting it on Twitter, promoting it on Instagram, and kind of grew. And it was one of them where we couldn't afford to buy the next stock until we'd sold out the initial amount of stock. So it was like we'd have a great 2 weeks and then we'd sell out, and then we could afford to buy some more stock. And it really started to pick up as we were promoting it, and a lot of people started to wear it. And again, there was probably a lot less competitors then than there is now. So as it kept growing, we kept adding more products. So we added tracksuits. It was a very simple, organic business model. It was kind of every penny we had, we reinvested it back into the business and kind of opened a new area to the business, whether it might have been jackets or it might have been tracksuits. And it kind of really started to take traction when we finally, I went away to film another series of a TV show, and Scott was left to his own devices anyway, found a factory that we could finally get payment terms with, which meant we could order stock and pay for it after on a 30-day payment terms. So I got back from the show and he was like, "Oh, just to let you know, I've ordered like a lot of stock." And I was like, How much stock? It was like about 100 grand's worth. And I was like, oh my God. And at this stage, we didn't even know what it was yet. It was something we were both passionate about, and we absolutely loved it, but we didn't know what it was yet. So I was like, oh God, he's like, don't worry, sales are flying at the moment.
Was there a return policy as well as a 30-day payment term?
That's all it was. And to be fair, he made the right decision. It sounds a lot of stock, but then when you spread it across all the different SKUs that we got to at that point, it wasn't actually a massive amount of stock. And that's when we really started to grow, when we actually could get payment terms and we could actually have products in. And again, when I went back on TV, it kind of gave us a bit more of an extra boost, and there was other people promoting it, new people. And then we launched women's wear, so we became, a men's and women's streetwear brand. And then quickly after that, we decided to go for a different model to what everyone else was doing. We were getting offered to go in, your high street stores. And it kind of scared me letting someone else put me in the corner of their store and not represent the brand how I wanted it to be represented. And we were looking at doing a large billboard campaign across the UK, and we thought, you know what, everyone's doing these billboard campaigns, we need to do that. And then we just looked at it from a different angle, and the amount it would have cost for the campaign, we thought, I wonder what we could get a shop for. So we reached out to Trafford Centre and we kind of negotiated a 3-month deal as a pop-up. And we opened a Trafford Centre store, and we decided it was only going to be for 3 months. It was a pop-up, but we tried to put as much money into it as we possibly could to make it look like, a real store. Like, it wasn't just a case of like boxes and rails lined up or anything. It was a proper store. And I think that separated us massively from a lot of our competitors at the time, that, people called us at the time bedroom brands. And having a store in probably one of the busiest shopping centres in the UK just meant the brand grew massively. And you also had the that people could come in and actually feel the quality. So for a first time customer, they were coming in and feeling the quality. And then from our side, had a huge benefit from actually seeing our customer and understanding who our customer was versus, you know, you look at your data online and they're 18 or 18 to 25 and they're from a certain place, and you get a bit of information, but actually speaking to the customer and seeing them and what they like about the brand, it was really good. From there, we just kind of grown, built the structure in the team, and we have 54 members of staff now and ship globally around the world.
Amazing. Wow. And I'd like to take you right back to the start again, because I feel so many young people will be listening to this and they've got all these ideas. A lot of people say that successful people create successful businesses because they're able to see something that other people aren't able to see, or able to at least connect the dots and find a solution. I remember reading an article about you guys years and years ago, and it was almost like the tagline was, we want to be able to create a clothing brand that a footballer could wear, but also a kid, you know, growing up on a council estate could wear. So there was that side to it, but then it was also, you were really one of the first companies to use influencers online. So when did you kind of discover that you had something special there, or did you? But then how important was it to then pursue that as well?
It's a brilliant question. You're exactly right. That is why, and what we wanted from the brand was it to be worn by everyone. An inclusive club that anyone can be involved in, that appreciates the clothing and appreciates looking a certain way. And the point, there's never actually a point in business, because you're always chasing the next thing, so you never actually stop and think. And this is probably one of the things that I struggle with, is looking back and actually appreciating how far we've come and what I want to do more. But I think when we opened the Trafford Centre, and there was a lot of traction and a lot of people talking about the brand right then, and I think that was probably when I realised we've got past the stage of, is it a brand? Is it going to make it? Do people know who we are? Like, I can remember when we were doing a trade show in Vegas, and I remember saying to Scott, imagine what it's like when people for Christmas ask for something from Couture Club as a Christmas present.
Yeah, that's cool.
And obviously through sales at that period, you see a lot more people ordering stuff. And I think now seeing that and understanding that's amazing, because it's like, we've got there now, but it's like the next step, it's like the next country, the next territory, so it's always a push.
Yeah, and you've mentioned there about because I definitely notice it with us when it comes to business as well, that you constantly want to strive for more because you're scared of becoming complacent. And it's only when me and Ben sit and have a drink together that we actually stop and think, and they're just like, with you as well, we're just like, fuck, like this is amazing. So you've obviously touched on there that there's this kind of pursuit. Is it obsessive?
Yeah, I would say it is. In a positive way though. It's obsessive, but it's calculated and driven. You know, you look at everything and you're just against yourself every single day. And I think that's one thing, especially in our industry, a lot of people tend to look at what, you know, their competitors are doing or what other people are doing. And I think you can really drive yourself down that way. Whereas if you go in and are obsessed with your own brand and making your own brand better and focus on everything you're doing, there's a real positive outcome there. And I think that's one thing that we do. But I think along the way, there is, and there has been times of complacency or a case of never probably feeling the struggle. I think that's one thing, because we did grow quite rapidly. Every month was getting better. Every year was getting better. And I think with everything that happened in the world, like throughout COVID, obviously it was a terrible time, but for the clothing industry, it was quite a busy time. And when you came out of COVID and it dropped a month, it was like, hang on a second. Like, whoa, we didn't beat last month now. And you kind of then all of a sudden put this massive amount of pressure on yourself. And I think feeling that struggle is probably super good as well, because that stops the complacency. But I think coming out of it, we probably reacted too slow. We came out of it and we still had the same clothes online, whereas naturally everyone's been locked up for 2 years. They couldn't be wanting to go out when things open up. We didn't expect things to happen as quick as they did, and it's like, that was one lesson we learned. So we were a bit slow on it, and people didn't want to buy tracksuits when they could start going out every single week. So it's just constant challenges, but it's all good.
Just touching on that kind of, you talking about that rapid growth that you experience as a company. obviously we can sit here and glamorize it and talk about how incredible it is and all the positives that come with growing a big business quite quickly. But I'd love to kind of delve a little bit deeper and ask you kind of what were some of the challenges that came with a rapidly growing company? Because I can imagine it's probably not easy to manage when you've got other commitments going on. You was off the back of a TV show, like you said, and other work commitments. Like, it just started off as an idea with your mate and it's grown into a massive enterprise very, very quickly. What were some of the kind of challenges that came as part and parcel with that challenge?
From my side, there was a lot, because again, I have no experience in fashion. I never went to university or anything like that. So growing a business, it was like I was just so focused on the clothing, the marketing side of things, and cool people wearing what I thought was cool clothes. But there's a whole challenge when it comes. I don't know how to do a lot of the technical stuff around the business. I don't know how to, the ins and outs of the back end coding of a website. So it's kind of, there's a massive struggle in staffing, who the right people are. Do they fit in with the culture of the brand? Do they fit in with the rest of the team? I think finding the right staff to work with you was super challenging. And I think almost, for me, I know everyone talks about it in podcasting, it's a little bit cliche, there was a lot of imposter syndrome, like it was growing that fast and I didn't really know what I was doing, if I'm honest with you, and I still don't to this day, and I can admit that. I just work super hard and I love what I do, but I don't know exactly what I'm doing on everything that I'm doing. I just give it a go, work as hard as I can to try and get the best out of it. And I think that's probably what a lot of people don't talk about in growing a business, is like, not everyone knows what they're doing. From the surface, they might look like they do, but they don't actually always know every answer. They just kind of have a good front. So it was that. It was everything. I think everything was a challenge because I didn't know what I was doing. Everything was new. Every single milestone we hit was great, but at the same time, it just worried me. Like, what if I can't control how big it grows, or what if can't deliver all the goods, or what if...
Did it feel like a lot of pressure?
At the time, I probably didn't... When we were probably going through the most growth, I was probably more excited than pressure. But then I think now there's a lot more expectation, and I feel a lot more pressure now as we've got older and we've had experience in things. I think no one really expected anything from us, so the growth was just like exciting. So I do feel there's a lot more pressure now, and there's a lot more competitors out there now, so naturally competition creates pressure and expectation.
Yeah. And do you think that you've, obviously you just touched on that you feel a bit of an imposter syndrome, do you think you've learned more by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone?
Oh, without a doubt. And I can say that every day I go to work I still learn something new, every day. And I think that's a good thing, obviously. Eventually I want to get to the stage where everything's fully under control and I don't have to learn something new every single day, but yeah, it's an exciting time.
Do you think now that is more competitors now, do you relish that opportunity and challenge? Do you see that as a good thing? Because I imagine to begin with you would have been like, oh shit, but now it's like, this is good, we can learn stuff, it's competition.
To be fair, my background from when I was 8 years old till 21, I used to be a racing driver and race go-karts when I was little, and then racing cars. So competition to me is the best bit. Like that, that's what makes it fun. Like I always say, it's me versus me, but at the same time, you are competing. You compete. So like, I love it, and I think that's what. I don't think if there wasn't competitors, I don't think we would have got where we are today. If I'm honest with you. I think having that competition, almost having that, who's the next target, or who can we overtake, or who's doing amazing numbers, having that kind of, which probably contradicts what I said at the start of the conversation, does drive you harder and because otherwise you'd be like, oh, we're doing amazing, just stay like this, like it's good, rather than always aiming for the stars.
Yeah, because there's so many small businesses that start out, and we were guilty of it as well, that are so obsessive over protecting their IP, protecting, the brand, and of course that is massively important. But if you're good enough, you're gonna get competitors. It's going to happen, and you just need to accept that, and then think, well, actually, it doesn't fucking matter what anyone else is doing as long as I'm doing all the good stuff. Then that's all that matters.
100%. And I think there's times when I probably have fallen back and been like, if we've had a tough month, and then you see someone's posting their record sales, and you think, right, I I need to regroup it, like, and focus on what we're doing. But then when you do focus on what you're doing and you don't actually look at any of that, you do 10 times better. So that's like where we're at right now, is just kind of making sure that every single thing that we're bringing out and every single thing that we're doing across, from product marketing, everything's the best we can do. That's the best we can do. So we'll see.
Is that something you really had to learn to do, or did that come quite naturally? Being able to just shut out the noise, focus on yourself. We talked earlier about being obsessive, but in a healthy, positive way, being obsessed with being the best version of yourself, essentially. Was that something that always came naturally, or did you have to learn to do that?
I think it's a great question. I think I actually kind of just moulded into that. I was never really like that when I was younger, but then when we got into the business, I think I never expected to get where it is today, like with no experience. And it was just more for me of, I absolutely loved clothing and I wanted to start a brand. I never had a business plan. I never kind of said like, oh, this is what we're going to do year one, this is what we're going to do year two. I just wanted to grow something and wanted to do it. So yeah, I kind of just moulded into that kind of competitiveness. Well, I think once we beat what we ever thought we'd ever do, it's like, right, let's get behind this now and really push it and try and make it even bigger.
Wow.
When it comes to, obviously we've talked about the successes, and I know that you said that you relish the competition, and I guess for a lot of people it would be the stress that would bury them, I think, but you obviously, because of your attitude towards it, that wasn't the case for you. If anything, it spurred you on. What's been the most difficult thing, if you could pick something, that has came about from running a successful business? Was there ever been a time when you've just been like, no, I can't do it?
There's not been times when it's, no, I can't do it. There's been a lot of times where it's, the problem is with, same as every business, there's so many different moving parts going on. And it's like, for example, if there is an issue in something that's technical to do with, online website traffic or something like that I physically don't understand, and that's the part that's struggling. That's when it gets me down, because all I want to do is find someone that can help me in that area, or at least learn as much as I possibly can. So I will sit and I'll listen, I'll read, I'll do whatever I can. If I can't change that, that's the frustrating point of like, who can? Someone's got to be able to do it. There's someone out there that's a specialist in that area. And I think that's when the frustration, I think that's when it gets you down, is when, you don't know enough about something and you can admit that to yourself, and it's almost, you're annoyed at yourself that you don't know about that. You're like, why do I not know about that? How do I not know about that? And it's kind of, and the amount of time it takes to learn. Like, I was never good at school. I was very good at art, and I was good at sport, but actual academic work, I was terrible at, and my concentration was terrible. Like, so it's almost takes you back to that point of when I was at school and I was struggling at school, and I was thinking like, why does everyone else know that or remember it? I've read it the same amount of times then, but I just don't remember it. And it's kind of like, that's a struggle that you go through, I think.
Do you think, not to turn it into a therapy session, do you think that experiencing that struggle and adversity in school and maybe thinking you were either inferior or not capable, do you think that's led to this then desire to potentially want to prove something to yourself, to become
Do you know what?
successful?
It's probably not at school, but it's to do with racing, why I am how I am. I raced all my life, like I said to you, and I was very fortunate. My dad raced before that and rallied. And when I was racing, I got to a certain level, which is like Formula Renault, which say 4 levels below Formula 1. And it was just, we just couldn't afford to keep going. However many sponsors we had at the time, I just couldn't afford to keep going. And it was probably seeing people that I'd raced against throughout my life and people I'd beaten, continue going because the parents, had a couple of 100 million and it was nothing to them. Seeing that and me stopping eventually, when it got to a point when it was like, we know we're not going to get any further now. There's no point throwing loads of money at this when we can't even afford to, get a small percentage of what it costs for a year. I think stopping something that you're good at and something that you love because of something out of your control, that's what's given me the drive. That's what's really pushed me, because it's made me think, you know what, I'm not letting that happen again. And if my son now wants to be in Formula 1, I want to be able to give him every opportunity to get there. I don't want to give him the opportunity to get to a certain level and be like, yeah, we're going to have to stop now, we can't afford it anymore. And so that's possibly one of the reasons that really drives me.
Brilliant. I think, again, it's just another example of not being defeated by something, and then turning that as then it gets turned into
I love that.
positive.
I think for anyone listening we've all experienced times when we've maybe had to give something up or sacrifice or compromise on something we're passionate about, but we can either let that spiral out of control and have a kind of a defeatist attitude about it and think that represents us as a person, we can't do anything, or we can turn it into a win like you've done, and it's inspiring.
I think that's it. I think there's always times when it seems like there's no way of getting through, but I think, like my dad used to always say to me when I was younger, like, something that's complicated, it's just loads of simple things put together. So just pick them up, break them down, and just do one at a time, and eventually it'll become easier. And it's kind of like, that's a very simple way of looking at stuff, but that's kind of how I look at everything. Is like, if I'm struggling with something, right, what are all the parts that make it up? What can I do about each different one? And then kind of just work your way through it.
Yeah. When we were chatting outside before we came in, and of course because of the nature of this podcast, we chat about our mental health a lot. And what a lot of people listening to this might not realise is we've actually, this whole topic and conversation, this whole chat so far, we've been talking about our mental health. We've maybe not used that term yet. But you obviously mentioned that it's something that's really close to your heart. There's a lot of work that you're doing within the company that you want to focus on. So tell us how much of an important topic this is for you.
I think in the last year I've lost a friend, and then I've got a few people that have suffered from mental health around me. So in my own personal life, it's a huge apparent issue, like immediate issue, sorry. And not only that, I think looking at my business and the business's demographic, 18 to 25 to 35, male and female, we have a voice to them customers. And I know that there's going to be obviously a lot of customers that are out there that do suffer from mental health. So one thing that we really want to do is kind of help, support. We did, like we were chatting before, we didn't have an actual plan. But what we wanted to do is anything that we are going to raise for mental health is let our customers decide which charity it goes to. Because there's so many charities out there, it's impossible to pick behind one. There's some that have been helping a friend of mine, and they're smaller charities, but then you've got the large charities, and I don't know enough about the charities to actually, say this is the right one. So we're going to let our customers decide where the money goes. But not only that, I think a lot of brands try and kind of not make money out of a charity or anything like that, but it's kind of you can't win either way. So it's quite a sensitive subject for a brand to be, doing anything around charity based, because it's almost like people bring out a t-shirt and percentage of sales go towards things. So we're still working out the logistical side of how we're going to do it, but we obviously want to get behind the mental health as one of the key topics that the brand's going to help, and it fits perfectly with our demographic.
Yeah.
Oh. I was waiting for someone else to say something. I was going to ask, just kind of taking it back a few steps, Scott. So we talk about the building process of the company. Like, you can talk now about some of the amazing projects you've got going on with mental health and that kind of stuff. You kind of said there was no plan. You were just kind of, I don't want to say winging it, but you was learning on the job. Was that also the case with you and your own personal mental health, or was that something that you kind of always had in check? I'd love to know, because I think to grow a business the size of which you've grown one, and the success and the reviews and how much people love your brand, you would assume on the surface that you've always had it together. Great looking guy, been on TV, you got everything going on. And you would assume, there's a point to this, calm down. You would assume that you've just always had it together mentally, as well as everything else going on in your life. But as we know, that's not always the case. And were there things you had to kind of make sure were in check, especially in the early days when things maybe were more pressuring and difficult whilst it was in the growing phase? Were there kind of things like exercise, for example? You was like, right, if I don't train enough, I'm going to suffer here. It's going to affect the business. Or were you just, like I say, winging it?
There's a few points to this which I'll discuss. Training for me has always been, it helps everything. And it's always been part of my day. Not as much since I've had my little boy, because it's a little bit more challenging now. I thought we'll move on to that after. But I think that is probably something that kept me going the whole way throughout. I never really missed a day, like even when we were starting the business, because again, when I started the business, I probably had a little bit more time and probably a little bit less pressure because there wasn't any expectation. I'd say now I have less time and more expectation. So initially, I probably had things together more than probably the last year and a half because I had more time. No one relied on me. You know, I was a single guy back then, going out, you know, having fun, kind of started a cool brand. Yeah, like you said, all these things. So I probably just was like riding the wave a little bit then. But then as you start having responsibilities and then you kind of look at them and then look at the business and what you're doing, and then you've got, you know, all the staff that work for the company, you know, you've got to look after them, you've got to look after yourself, you look after your partner, look after your little boy, and looking after all these people. And I think that's when the pressure comes a little bit, is like, and that's when the lack of training, sometimes you feel like you haven't got time to, or you feel like you generally physically don't have the energy certain days to do it. And you know, everyone always says like there's enough hours in the day, and yeah, there is, but then some days you can't physically do it, and as much as you want to, it's like you can't. But to contradict that, the one thing that always makes everything better is when you do train. And like we were chatting before, and I said, like, apart from the 5 minutes after a leg session or something like that, there's not been one time in my life I've come out of the gym and felt worse than when I went in. Every single time it makes it better, and I think that's one thing that I'm going to implement back into my lifestyle. What we were talking about is making time for me to train every single day still now, which is probably the time when I'm struggling to train the most, and that's probably when I feel the most stressed, because it's probably hand in hand, the fact that I'm training slightly less than I ever have done, and I'm feeling more stressed than I've done. So if I can fit that in, it'll probably take away a lot of that stress, and I'll probably be more level-headed and push more.
Do you find is it harder now with the responsibility and the pressure of running a big business with loads of moving parts? Is it harder to find that bit of time in the day for to look after number one?
Yeah, I think that's one thing I struggle with, and it's probably, and it's not a case of anyone else. I probably put that expectation on myself. Like I will do, like I'll wake up, you know, I'll spend my time with my little boy while I'm at home in the morning, and it takes me an hour and a bit to get into work, and it's probably that time there that's, you know, semi-wasted time. I do a lot of phone calls on the way, and then when I get home, probably about 7:30 or something like that by the time I get, well, no, 6, 6:30 when I get home, I literally bath him, put him to bed, and it's like, I've got to see my missus all day. I want to kind of have dinner and see her. And it's easy to kind of put it off after you've had that. You've got, you know, you've eaten your food, you've got a bit of a lull, and you think. So like that time now, and it's like we were chatting before, I'll get home tonight and I'm going to train because I've been surrounded by motivational people all day.
There we go.
I need to train when I get home.
Right. So that's the teaser for the episode. Right? Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, so it's something that I probably need to add in more now, and I think it'll help me a lot more now.
Yeah, and with that, we've touched on the responsibility as well, but pulling it back to you needing to be a very creative individual. Obviously, you run a business, you're based in the fashion industry, and it's keeping up with the trends, getting ahead of the trend. Does training and exercising help you become creative and more creative, or is there anything else that you do to become creative?
I think that's one thing that's harder when you're a creative in a business versus when you're, you know, in a normal, to probably say more academic role, is ideas don't just, it's not a case of just, you know, going through a piece of work. They just come and they go at different times. And I think training massively helps, because I think that clears your mind and then allows thoughts to come in. It's like I can be on a treadmill sometimes, I can be just running, not thinking about work or anything, and then all of a sudden somebody will come into bed and I'll think, great idea, and I'll literally just have a little message and then I'll on to the next, so I'll put it in my notes and just keep going. So I definitely think it's got a massive part to play in clearing the mind to allow the creativity to happen. But touching on that creative side, I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is taking the time out to actually not do something, you know, to actually sit and think, or allow yourself to sit and think. And that's when most of the ideas come, is when, you know, if you go for a walk or you're doing something that's not sat in an office. And I think that's probably one of the things that's challenging for any creative out there. And it's like, oh, we need this on this deadline. Like, hope the idea comes before then.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ross, because I think I can relate to that massively. And I'll always say to people that, look, your great ideas are never going to come from when you're sitting in front of the computer. They come when you're training, when you're out for a walk, when you're out for a run. But a lot of people, because we idolise this work hard mentality, we were discussing again outside before the episode started, like we think it comes from, back in the day, it was a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. So essentially, the harder you worked and the more you got done would then be reflected in your paycheck. So people still have this mentality, and especially at the moment, e-commerce businesses are through the roof, drop shipping and stuff is through the roof. So there's going to be a lot of people that are wanting to start these online businesses, but they're going to be thinking that they need to be sitting in front of a computer all day to do that. But actually, getting outdoors and having the creative thoughts is where that's going to happen. What would you say to these people? Because obviously you're fully admitted that you don't have the exact right balance. But what would you say to the people who are thinking that they need to be stuck in the office working 20 hours a day in order to be successful?
I just think it's a lot of rubbish, like we were saying before.
There's your answer then.
I think you've got to enjoy it to be good at anything. And I think the second it stops being fun and stops, giving you that buzz, it's like you kind of lost it there. So I think these we touched on the 5 a.m. club before, and it's like, I get up at 6, I don't get up at 5. But I understand the timings of things and how I need to work my day out. But for me, if I got up at 5, I probably wouldn't work to my maximum throughout the day because I'd be slightly too tired. So I've just adjusted it. Still use a lot of the principles, but just an hour later. And I think a lot of people see things on Instagram now that, like you said, you've got to work all hours that you're given, have 4 hours sleep. It's not sustainable. It might be for, a few days or a week, or, if you're a really strong person, 2 weeks. But for the long term and for a long period of time, I think you've got to find your own balance. Listen to everything that's out there, but at the same time, find out what works for you. Mm-hmm. Adjust it so that it meets your requirements in a way. And then that way, you'll be able to give it your best shot. I think that's the best bit of advice.
I'm glad you brought up that book. It's one of my favourite books.
Yeah.
But one thing that no one really mentions about the book is, although it's called the 5 a.m. Club and it preaches getting up at 5 a.m., not once has it mentioned what time you've got to go to bed, which I think screams to me that it's a very malleable, very you can twist and change it as much as you like. If you're going to bed at midnight because you work those kind of hours, getting up at 5 a.m. is probably a bad idea. Ultimately, it's about getting the right amount of sleep, working hard enough, but not too hard in the daytime when you're active, not burning yourself out, but working optimally. And getting up at 5 a.m. is just like a rough kind of guideline as to when that might help you. But kind of touching on that, I'd love to ask you about I'd love to talk about sleep is where I'm getting at, because it's one thing that can massively impact our day when we're actually in the office or we're on a shoot or whatever we're doing when we're in the creative process. If we've not slept enough or even oversleeping, can impact our day. Did that ever kind of occur to you in the early days or even now, having a kid and a busy lifestyle, that kind of stuff? Sleep can be difficult to come by, especially. At what point did you realise, or, did it come to you that this is something I need to get nailed down, because if I don't, it's going to affect personal life, business life, and that kind of stuff?
Second my son was born. No, I've always appreciated sleep. Not in a way that some people do where they like really long sleeps, but I know my times for sleep, and if I get anything more than 7.5 hours, I'm too tired. And it's like, there's a point. Mm-hmm. So whenever I go to bed, I'll go to bed when I feel like I need to go to bed. And that, it can vary, but as long as I get, from anything from 6 to 7.5, I'm prime. Anything less, I'm too tired. Anything more, I'm too tired again. So I think it's, again, just finding your balance. But again, and if any creatives are listening, they'll understand this. Sometimes at night time, your brain works amazingly. And what should be going to sleep time is like, wow, everything's coming here now. And when I was starting a business and I was single, and I didn't have to get up super early for the little man and things like that, some nights I'd probably get more done from 9 p.m. to 1 in the morning than I would do in a full day. So it's about appreciating the time and understanding how much your body needs to work to its best, but then also not setting boundaries on your life of when it's needed. I think the whole world's changed a lot now since COVID, with working remotely and things like that, but I think people sleep at different times. People need different amount of times. It's just find the best amount for you.
Yeah, I think again it comes from, well, the health industry. It's this lack of information, because it used to be right, you need to get 8 hours sleep. I don't know where this came from, but it wouldn't surprise me if this was a study conducted by like a mattress company to say that you need to buy this big, expensive mattress because you're going to spend, a third of your day sleeping. So for anyone listening as well, I actually pointed you onto this book when we first met. It was Sleep by Nick Littlehales.
Oh, yeah.
It's essentially the man that taught Cristiano Ronaldo how to sleep and the Manchester United team how to sleep. And he basically says you need to sleep in 90-minute cycles, apparently. I've tried it and it works. I don't know whether it's a placebo or not, but I will trust him. But the biggest takeaway that I took from what you said there was that actually a lot of people think there needs to be a set way. It needs to be, right, you need to do this at this time. But actually, it's having the freedom to listen to your body, potentially.
Yeah. Flexibility as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's it, what you just said there when you touched on listening to your body and listening to yourself. I think if you actually listen to yourself, or give yourself enough time to listen to yourself, then it kind of tells you all, like, as in, if you need sleep, if you need, how your brain thinks, how everything's thinking. If you listen to yourself, you're probably going to be better than if you just kind of, right, I'm going to bed this time, doing this, doing that. Because some nights you won't need to sleep. You'll lie there in bed and you'll be looking at the ceiling. It's kind of like what you said, just be in tune with yourself, I think.
Yeah. I'd like to take us back to a topic that we touched on earlier as well, if you feel comfortable talking about it, because again, we've brought up the conversation of mental health and the narrative behind it, and we know that a lot of young men who follow your brand, who wear your clothes, will probably aspire to be like you and also almost see you as a role model because what you've achieved. But when it comes to poor mental health in males, it's one of the things that's not spoken about enough, and it's because we do have this, we need to be a man's man. If we talk about our emotions, that makes us feminine, or is a sign of mental weakness or fragility. And you obviously touched on the story of your friend, and thanks so much for sharing that with us. You seem to be someone that's quite in tune with your emotions and are quite happy talking. Now, with everything that happened with your friend, how important is it for us as men to be able to speak to one another about how we feel?
I think it's more important than ever. I think there's multiple parts to this. I think as more and more people are talking, I also feel like there's more and more people that still need to talk. And I think that's one thing that's hard. I do believe with my friend is a slightly different scenario to the needing to talk part. But just in general, from other people that are suffering, I think as more and more people are talking, it's kind of, I feel like there's even more than there has been before that need to still talk. And I think just being there for people and offering that and checking in, it sounds stupid, do you know what I mean, like just checking in on your mates. But I do it more often than I ever have done before, and a lot of my friends do it a lot more often than they ever have before. Just checking in, what you're up to, what you've been up, just catching up and things like that. And I think from having 2 years nearly of kind of separation from each other, it's quite easy to almost, too tired to go and see so-and-so tonight. Whereas before lockdown, I'll come out tonight, I'll come meet you. And it's like, I think what's happened to me has made me appreciate when people do make the effort around you and kind of never really bail. Like years ago, sometimes you might have gone, I've been out all week, I'm just going to pay it off, I'm not going to go. I think now it's like, if someone wants to see you, it's kind of like, if you can make the time, try and make the time. Like, don't miss out on any opportunity you've got.
And not take things for granted. Similar to, like we joked about sleep. Probably never fully appreciated sleep to that level until you had a child. So it's about just appreciating one another and the time that you've got with one another as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's like we've touched on quite a few times, and I'm glad you've raised it as well, Ross, is checking in on your mates, because there'll be times where you could make plans when somebody pulls out and the natural reaction is to be like, oh, fucking such a dick for pulling out. Do you know what I mean? That's the surface level issue. It's actually, well, why is he not coming out, or why is she not coming out? I should probably go and check that they're all right and check in on them.
100%. I couldn't agree more, because your natural reaction is, oh, they bailed. Can't believe they're not coming. No, maybe like understand a little bit more, or at least try and understand, and give it a few days and be like, oh, do you want to just go and do something a bit more chilled if you don't fancy a night out? Because I think there's a lot going on in the world at the moment as well. And listen, this is just my own opinion, but whereas everything used to revolve around a night out, I feel like now people are moving a little bit away from that. It might just be my age,
No, I'll back you up on this, Ross.
It's like people are moving away, and I've got certain friends that kind of cut their drinking down, or at least stop drinking, and they don't want to be put in certain scenarios. And then naturally, it's in the past, a social thing that you do was, we'll go on a night out, we'll go out for dinner and have a few drinks, and it just never ends up just being a few drinks. It's like you're out, aren't you? And like one of my friends, he messaged me about something. He said to me, like, listen, I'm going to be honest, I'm really sorry I'm not going to come, but I don't want to put myself in that position because of, I'm not drinking, and I don't want to put myself in a place where I feel like I could, go back or have too many drinks and feel rubbish. I said, completely understand, I get it. Let's do something different. Let's go gym and we'll get some food after. It's like, all day long I'll do that with you. And it's like, times are changing and people are changing. Like, I think at the age, where I'm at, I think people probably do things a little bit differently, and I think it's kind of understanding that not everything revolves around alcohol always anymore.
Yeah. Ross, how important is it to kind of create that environment where your pals feel comfortable to bring that to you? Because I can look at not just people that I know, but even a former version of myself that might not have been so welcoming of that kind of information from a friend. And it sounds horrible to say it out loud, but if a friend came to me 4 or 5 years ago and was like, Danny, I'm going to miss this night out, I'm not really feeling it, I'm trying not to drink at the minute, and I think if I do come, I might get too drunk and feel crap the next day, I'd be the first to admit I'd probably banter them for that. I'd probably be like, what are you on about, mate? Like, sort yourself out, come along. And that would be the worst possible response. But there was a version of me a few years ago that probably would have reacted like that to one of my bestest mates. So I guess the question is, how important is it? And also kind of how do you create an environment where your mates feel comfortable coming to you with that kind of a message?
It's a great question. I probably would have done exactly the same. I think in the past, I think it depends very much on the reason why. Like years ago, if someone said to me, oh mate, I'm training at the moment, I want to go for holiday, I'm not going to come out because I want to go to the gym the next day, I probably would have been like, oh my God, I probably would have been the same. But I think now it's a lot to do with why someone's doing something. And around the environment, I don't necessarily know what I do to try and do that. I just try and be understanding, I suppose. I think it's like, I think I now, before reacting to anything or before looking at anything, I always try and understand where they're at or what they might be going through, or what could have happened. Or I think just being in check and knowing, like we were saying about actually checking in. If someone's like, oh mate, I've had a bit of a shit day, if I hadn't checked in, I wouldn't have known he had a shit day. So then when I speak to you next time, how's things going, mate? You feeling any better? Or whatever. It's like, by doing that, you know a little bit more about what's going on day to day, because we can't always see your friends every single day anymore. We're all busy. A lot of my friends have their own businesses and probably just as stressed as I am, and we can go weeks sometimes. And when you see each other, you're still your best mates. You've got months with some of them, and you see them, and they're still your best mates. But I think it's just, I don't know, just being an understanding person. Like, it's a cruel world out there at the moment. Like, there's a lot of bad things happening, and be nice to people. I think. It's a tough question. I don't know the answer.
Sorry to put you under the throw you under the bus there. It is a hard question.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Like, what would you do to make people feel comfortable? Something like that. I said, I don't know what I do to make them feel comfortable, but they do. I think it's a case of, from my side, probably just asking how they are a lot and seeing. I think
that's most of it. I think it's and probably another part of it is when those situations do arise, which they inevitably will. Where someone's not feeling it, or on the surface it's like they've copped out, but there might be something else going on. I think, like you said, before you react, investigate what's going on internally. So have a look at it and think, well, what else could be going on here? what am I feeling about the situation before I act? And then if you go into the situation and behave according to what you've thought, then chances are you're going to create that safe space for them to come back in the future. Or they might say to their pal Jimmy and go, oh, well, I chatted to Ross about that thing the other day and he was actually really sound. Maybe you want to chat to him about it and ignore Mikey because he's not the best at that kind of thing. And you know, and then from that, you know, you're going to create that environment where your friends are going to confide in you.
That's exactly what you just said there. I was waiting to let you finish, but I was just going to say, once you've been understanding about one thing, they know you're going to be understanding. You know, you're not going to be that person, so they're going to share more with you. And I think that's important, whatever it might be. You know, we might not be talking about a night out anymore, but if something's up and you understood about something that, you know, someone else could have taken completely the wrong way, they'll be like, well, I'm going to tell him because he was there for me. Do you know what I mean? He was sound, didn't judge or, you know, have an opinion on why I couldn't go or whatever.
Yeah. It's about leading by example in a way, isn't it? If you're willing to be understanding, put yourself out there, but then also talk about how you're feeling about things, being open and honest with your thoughts and emotions, that might then get more people to then approach you because, oh, Ross was talking about that the other day, I'm going to go and speak to him because I'm feeling the same way. And then that generates the conversations. I think there's a responsibility on us to lead by example and speak openly and honestly in that way as well.
Yeah, I think in general there's just a responsibility for us to not put the expectation onto the individual and for us to do the reaching out. And like you said, if all of us display these behaviours, we're never going to have to rely on someone reaching out to us because we're going to be creating an environment. And then another big one I think is just trying to change this narrative of what a group of young men is. Like I've said before, I'm joking about it, and like honestly I'm not being a snowflake, I'm not trying to be old and boring, but I genuinely believe that Jay's character from the In-Betweeners wouldn't be allowed now, genuinely already, because of that type of banter between young. Do you know what I mean? Probably in 10 years' time they'll end up having to have it censored at the start, saying political or gender ideals have changed since filming this. Because I think but again, then I know we're joking, but then on a serious note, that's the kind of a group of men feel as if they need to act like that, and then that becomes the parody. They become a parody of themselves. They become that environment or that group because that's what other young men do, and then that creates the environment of toxic masculinity and everything else. And then of course no young man is going to open up. Maybe that's just my opinion, I don't know, I'm not sure. But no, I think it's important, like I said, just for us to take the responsibility away from someone else. So if someone is struggling to reach out, we can just break down as many of those barriers as possible.
I think that's it as well, because you never actually know what's going on in everyone's life. You don't know. You think you know, but you don't know. You kind of, you know, you can speak to them all the time and find out, like, you know, there's loads of missing pieces that you didn't even know about. And it's like, just that having fun with your friends and having, like, you know, doing not necessarily what you always like, but what they might like to do, you know, or what the whole group's decided to do, you know, doing them fun little things and making the effort. It's like, I know I'm going to make more effort with all my friends this year. I know I am, because, you know, I've unfortunately been in a position where I've lost one. So it's like, wow, that's not happening again. Like, it's not. Yeah.
When it comes to business and when it comes to looking forward, what's the plans? What's next?
Oh, stress. No, I'm joking. There's a lot of plans. We've just moved into our new headquarters. So for years and years, myself and Scott, we've wanted to have, you know, like a warehouse and office all in the same location, everyone under one roof, kind of create that real, you know, fun working environment where if they want to nip over to the warehouse and sort out an order and, you know, put little notes in, do whatever they need to do, the marketing team, they can do that and just have everyone in one place. So just moved in there. That's super exciting. I think there's a lot of growth going on with the business, especially internationally now. I think we've still got a lot of work to do in the UK, but we're trying to grow the business internationally. But then doing a lot of work on like staff wellbeing and things like that as well. I think we were talking about nights out, and I feel like we're going back into it again. Everything that we did that was work related in the past was a night out, Friday night drinks, get steaming, everyone's can go over the next day. And I think as a business owner, and I think with what's going on in the world and what we want to kind of do, there needs to be a bit of a change in the narrative of that, that's how we celebrate. So we're incorporating like wellness days for the team and things like that, just because it's like, yeah, you can have a great night out and you feel great while you're out and, you know, you're up there. But the next day, however far you're above the line, you're coming back down. Do you know what I mean? It's going to happen. So we want people, you know, on a certain Friday. I think we've got 4 plans so far. So on a certain Fridays, you know, come in, have treatments, work in between, but go home refreshed. And then they've got the 2 days that they're, you know, they're not pressured, they're not in work, they don't have to be at the office at a certain time to actually relax, rather than going out for drinks on a Friday, waking up Saturday hungover, spending all Saturday on the couch, Sunday wishing they hadn't spent Saturday on the couch, and then come back into work on Monday. So doing a lot of things like that for the team. Like last year, our head of marketing, Hayley, arranged like Tough Mudder for the team, and that was for one of our friends who was suffering with mental health at the time. And I was sadly away at the time, and I was devastated about it, but they all did Tough Mudder and they loved it. So we're going to be working, you know, as a team to do a lot more activities like that, raising money again and raising awareness. Like, you know, we're a brand with a certain customer base that are all struggling. Not all, but a lot of people are struggling with, you know, with certain things, and we want to help that in any way that we can. You know, it's not here for a marketing tool, it's not here for anything like that. It's a case of, we've had people suffer. Like everyone I know at least knows someone that's suffering, and it's kind of like, let's try our hardest to, you know, make a difference here and actually help people.
I love that, and I think it's putting that wellness back into it, because a lot of progressive businesses recently who've been putting team morale and that connection first will be revolved around the drinking scene. And it's like, right, we'll have a party at work, everyone will stay there after work. Whereas actually the company's probably thinking, that's them still at work. They'll probably be talking about work. Therefore, we're probably going to still get more work done. And although that's great, and building, you know, those bonds in order to like boost team morale, which will boost productivity and all that type of stuff, I think it's massively important. What you're saying there is actually getting this team morale, but focusing on getting them to be fitter, getting them to be healthier, and kind of having that as the ethos of the brand.
I think that's exactly it. And listen, I'm not saying, oh, we're becoming a boring brand, because we're not. But what I'm saying is like, there's going to be scenarios that we do celebrate in the old-fashioned way, and you know, it's up to the team. Nothing's ever a forced thing like that anyway. But I think we've consciously got to look after our staff. Like, we want to be looked after, and we want the team to feel good and enjoy working and coming to work and working in a nice place, in a nice environment with a good culture. I think it's more important than ever. You know, everyone's been away from home. Everyone's had 2 years of like, you know, semi-boredom. But like, yeah, they might have had great years. You know, the weather was good. But it's like, now we are back. Like, we need to keep supporting them.
Where do you see it then? Where do you see it growing past then? Because obviously, like, I mean, the headquarters is huge. Like, that's obviously absolutely amazing. What's then? Have you envisaged anything else after that, or?
For me, it's just, there's, rather than, you know, talking like big numbers or anything like that, we just really want to create a global brand that's recognised, you know, across the world, and you know, it's loved by many, and we want to make amazing clothes that people can wear and rep all around the world.
Right,
love it. Absolutely love that.
It must be so fulfilling, like so rewarding to just like walk down the street and see someone wearing your gear.
I'm still thinking about what you said about wouldn't it be amazing if people was buying our stuff as Christmas presents. I'm still thinking about that, and like that kind of a vision. It's not about numbers, it's not about making yourself rich. It's like, how cool would it be if someone bought our stuff as a Christmas present for someone else as a gift? That's just like, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
love that.
It never at any point gets kind of old, you know, like what you were saying, the feeling. Like, I was in Trafford Centre yesterday, and I went to see Life Centre with a little boy. It's a nightmare, I didn't really like it. And we thought, right, we'll go past the shop. And every time I'm there with him, I always just wheel him in and we have a little look around and stuff. And like seeing people with the bags and, you know, seeing people in there, it's like, there's nothing better. It's like when I opened that store, I purposely worked in that store every night after being in the office until it shut, every single night until we opened on October the 16th, until Boxing Day. I just didn't have a single day off, just did the whole weekend shift, just because I wanted to see the people. I wanted to walk around Trafford Centre and see the bags and see the people enjoying the brand. And I think that's it. It's like seeing people appreciate something that, you know, you've made, and you've tried to give them the best possible customer service they can get. There's nothing better.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've just realised something. that we haven't told Ross about the challenge.
We haven't, have we?
We haven't even discussed the challenge yet.
It makes me nervous.
Surprised ourselves.
I
Really
actually forgot that we did the challenge.
I've been so engrossed in the conversation, I actually completely forgot.
We've got something that we do at the end of each episode. Basically, we've got a leaderboard. Now, I don't even know how the leaderboard's sitting at the moment, but basically, Matt Griffiths took it very competitive. Matt Morton as well. I think he was top of the leaderboard.
Very competitive, Matt Morton.
Essentially, what we're going to get you to do is do something for us. we finish off a lot of the episodes as with a little fitness challenge. Essentially, what we need you to do is we're going to get you to
Nothing chest, is it? I trained chest yesterday.
No chest, don't
It's
worry.
worse. It's legs. What essentially we're going to get you to do is we're going to get you to hold a 60-second squat hold. Okay.
Against the wall, yeah.
Against 60-second wall set, 60-second squat hold, and essentially what we're going to do is we are going to shout as many quick fire questions to you as possible. You need to answer as many of these questions whilst you're in the squat hold. If you can't hold it for 60 seconds, you're obviously going to lose bragging rights, but then we'll keep that, we'll count the most amount of number of questions that you've done or that you've answered correctly. Or if not, if you reach the full 60 seconds, we'll count that total number of questions. Have I went through everything?
You've covered everything. Well
Pretty
done.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ben is going to ask you the questions. Where's best for Ross to stand?
Right where you are.
Right where we are.
Where you are,
Okay.
We're going straight into it, yeah.
We're going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll count you down. We'll get you ready for it. We'll wheel the chair out the way.
You timing, Dan?
Oh, better time. One of us better time.
We'll just keep going for the rest of the day.
One of us better time. So, 60 second.
Are you going to ask
squat
questions?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
answer questions.
Oh, I know.
Right,
No pressure.
actually, help me, fuck.
I think we got about 20, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Matt got 22.
22.
Yeah, if memory
He's got
serves.
strong legs, though, hasn't he? Is he not?
And he did shout Roy Keane for most of the answers.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's true. Right, okay, so we're going to count down 1 minute. Ready to rock?
Yeah, I'm dreading it, but yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, we're off.
When are you most productive?
In the gym.
Who is your inspiration and why?
Oh, wow, that's such a hard one. Scott, my business partner, just because no matter what problem he's faced, somehow he always comes out winning.
What's your favourite number and why?
7. Just like the number.
In which subject were you worst at school?
There was too many. Oh my God, I don't even know. Making it off myself here.
Just say one.
Geography.
In which subject were you best at school?
Art.
What scares you?
Snakes.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs all day.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
LA.
Ooh, nice.
What would you change about yourself?
My ears.
What's something that you know you have to do but do not like doing?
Work harder.
Oh, right, well done. I was counting there. I don't know. Have you added them up?
Yeah, I got 9. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh, I was way
5,
too
6.
slow. I was more worried about not being able to.
You were
Not
too
gonna
honest.
lie, you was
too
just so honest. You was
too
way
honest.
too honest. Like you could have
too
just
honest.
been like maths,
Got me
cats.
quick
Like,
fire again. Do you know what I mean?
he was like, "Oh, it's such a hard one, and like you was proper going into deep thought. I was
No, you
thinking,
know when it
oh.
takes you back, and then I'm thinking like my mind's in school, and I was like, wow, why was
I counted 10. We got 10.
I was more worried about the 60-second squat, and then I didn't even need to worry about that. I was all right.
I think 10. We need to actually put a leaderboard.
What's the
up.
leaderboard?
Someone here.
Personally.
So
I think Matt got 22.
I think Matt Morton got
Yeah.
22.
Yeah, then Mac and Sky both got 13 each.
Yeah, because there's a big gap there, wasn't there?
Yeah. Everyone's around about the
It's a
10.
tough one to judge that though, because if they just quick fire, if they were actually right or wrong answers,
Yeah.
and if you know, like,
This is the competitive side. I can see it.
if I just shouted Roy Keane, I would have.
You were just too honest. That's
Yeah,
as simple
too
as that.
honest.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. No, that was amazing. What we normally do is once we finish the main bulk of the conversation, then we just we keep everything rolling, but we just chill. And then we just kind of chat about what we've went through, because it's cool to kind of do a wee segment afterwards, which is like once the camera's stopped, even though it keeps filming. But that was brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, class.
That was good.
Really good having you on. Do you think everything's all right in there?
I love that.
I was so guilty at times of just like listening to the conversation, like forgetting that I had to ask stuff. I was just like, wow, like making notes, like class.
We'll do that all the time, because it is difficult because there's three of us, and we'll kind of be like, I'll maybe ask the question that's maybe waiting, let's look around. But then because we're all so polite as well, we turn around and we just look at each other. And whenever we interrupt each other as well, we're just so fucking polite. We're like, I'm just going to stop.
It's good though, because sometimes when you do any podcast, it's like they're speaking over things, and big problem in there, especially with three of you don't speak over each other really, so.
Yeah.
No, that was brilliant.
It can make it difficult with the audio as well if we're, trying to get points in at the same time. But no, we're too polite, aren't we? Sorry, do you mind if I I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment there, sorry.
Sorry mate, continue.
Fucking polite interruption podcast.
It's like when you guys are talking, when you do some of the questions, I was listening, and I was like, in my head thinking of the first answer, it'd almost go on something else and start thinking about it.
I'm the worst for that. I'll be like, I've got a question in my head, and it's like, let's say it's what was your inspiration growing up? And I'd preload the question with loads of other crap, and then I'd think of other questions, and I'd be like, oh god. So I guess the first question I want to ask is this, and then also if you wouldn't mind answering this, and this, that'd also be great. Then I just kind of sit back and like
watch some squad.
So yeah, sorry for that.
It's good.
Did you get everything across that you wanted to? Was there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to? Because this will get put into the episode if there's anything else.
No, I think you guys honestly were brilliant. I think it was good, and I hope that the listeners think it's valuable as well, because
it's so valuable, like more valuable than I could have hoped as well, because
brilliant.
Like you say, especially people are going to see your name on this episode, the demographic of your brand that you've got, and it's going to reach out to, it's going to scream to a lot of people this episode, and some of the things we cover and discuss, and some of the points you made about yourself, about your journey, about some of the lessons, that kind of stuff. It's just, if I said the exact same thing, carbon copy, to your demographic, it's going to go through one ear out the other. And sometimes really valuable messages aren't heard because it's not the right person relaying the message. But you've come on here and shared some really great stuff, and the right people are going to hear it, and that's what's brilliant.
I think that's what's just important in general, is the fact that there's content here, and we've discussed, important things that if people actually, take the time to listen to it all, it's all super important and can help anyone and everyone around them as well. And I think that's what's so important now, is you don't necessarily know how much the smallest thing can help you, but it can. It's just kind of like just absorbing stuff, and whatever you take from it, use it as like a sieve, like let all the stuff out that you're not interested in, and just keep all the good stuff that you listen to.
I think as well, it's because of like someone your stature, like young lads need a role model. Like we do, we'll either have like a footballer but now the modern day like young lad might not follow that. He'll be aspiring to be like a business leader or like an entrepreneur, but then a lot of people will be aspiring again towards that work hard mentality, or doing it because they want the flash cars. So I think actually you being able to be that role model and actually being like, no, you know what, this isn't what it's all about. I'm creating a brand because I want, to create a culture of change as opposed to, just nice clothes. I think that's massively important.
I think you nailed it. I think it's like what we just probably discussed before we were chatting. It almost got like super glamorized a few years ago, starting your own business and being successful, and like all these hard, long hours that everyone was working. And it's kind of like, no one really said how hard it was then, or the challenges. And sometimes you don't even know what the challenges are. It's just stressful. It's just time consuming, and you don't necessarily see the results right away. So it's so easy for people to start something and go, oh, it's not working. You don't even know if it's not working yet. You don't know if it is working. You just got to keep going until, it gets to a point when you go, oh, right, yeah, we're here now. I think a lot of people either think it's going to be easy or give up because they've not got what they expected super quickly. I think that's one thing that's important.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why it's class that you've come on. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, as much as people can be inspired by what we've spoke about today, it could also be a really big wake-up call to people who think they want something, i.e. entrepreneurship, starting their own business. they listen to your story and think, oh shit, it's not what I thought it was.
It's actually hard work.
It actually is like, I'm not really in the right frame of mind or in the right stage of my life or one of a million other things where that's probably not the path for me right now. But a lot of people, like you said, blindly go into entrepreneurship thinking it's instant success, or, you know, work all around the clock, but that's, you know, that's part of the lifestyle, that kind of stuff, and loads of unhealthy habits along the way as well. And that's the life that they want. But really, like someone like yourself coming on the podcast explaining what the journey actually entails can be like a wake-up call to people.
I think there's something to that as well, and it's like, when I started the business, I was still doing nightlife at the same time, so I didn't take a wage for a year, like not a penny. And I think no one sees that, and it's like, everyone's like, oh, quit what you're doing, start a business. Like, I lived off I was on about 300 quid a week, and living in town, and I put every penny into the business. Like, every penny that I had was in the business. Didn't necessarily think, how am I going to pay for my food? How am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to pay for everything? When we'd obviously pay for the stock, I was like, shit. Like, me and Josh lived together at this time, and we were like, both skin, like really skin, and we were like, oh, that was a bit stupid. I could have at least kept 200 quid, you know, for myself, you know, just like pay for my food or whatever.
Wow.
But I think it's important that people, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, keep your job. Just do it on the side for a bit. Like, say, for example, that year period where I was still doing the nightclub stuff, but I started the business and didn't take any money from the business, that allowed it to grow. Like, me not having to, or need to, well, I did need to take money, but I didn't take it. But not actually taking money out of business allows it to grow. And I think any advice to anyone is, if you've got, you know, a passion or something that you want to do, rather than necessarily just drop all and start it on the side. Start working on it. And like we were saying before, we don't want you to work all hours in the day, but if it's something you love in the evenings, it's almost like a bit of a hobby to start off with, because you don't know what it is. It's like, oh, I'm going to design this in my evenings, and then at weekends I'm going to do it. Or, you know what, I've got to nip out to the post office on my lunch break to post some things that I've sold. Like, do that for 6 months and then like know what it is, and there's zero risk then. Like, there's this thing with Instagram, YouTube and everything, and everyone is like, go, drop what you're doing now, just dive into it. And it's like, I don't think it's the right message for a lot of people, that unless, you know, you've got something to fall back on maybe, you know, or financial backing from someone. I think if it's just someone that's new to it, completely getting into it, it's like, have a go, but don't risk yourself too much, you know, don't leverage anything you don't need to, kind of just put what you can in and see how it goes.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant way to sum it up as well. I think then the last actual thing, very quickly, I think what's really important is that relatability is there. Because there would have been a bunch of young lads watching you, Joss, on X on the beach, thinking, these lads, they've got it
that
fucking...
won't get shown anymore either.
They've got it cracked, they live in the high life, and obviously to some extent, like you would have been, but then actually saying, well, we didn't, you know, have two pennies to rub together, is, I think it's so much better just being that authentic. Like, I know even like for my business, when we started to like make really good money before, like I'd never experienced I was so proud of that. And, you know, you wouldn't want to tell people, but you were really proud of that fact. Whereas actually, then this financial struggles that you go through, I'm so much more proud of telling people that, because that's the truth.
You know what I am, and it's almost like one of them. No one sees that. Like, and no one really sees your first few years. It's like, you look at any business, people only see when it blows, or like, you know, when they think it's blown. Like, and I don't even feel like we're at that stage yet. You know, on the big stage, like of actually going like big. But it's like all them years where you live with barely any money because you're putting everything into the business, and all that struggle that comes with it. People don't see that. They just go, oh, he's got himself a sick car or whatever. And you're like, but yeah, I've worked my arse off for years to get this, and I've been my dream car forever. Like, and I've finally got it, and I get to drive to work in it every day, and I don't mind my hour and a half drive sometimes, because I'm in the car that, you know, it motivates me on my way into work. Well, people do just see the glory, no one sees the struggle, and I think that's important, that it's never going to be that quick. If it was that quick, let me know about it, because I won't be involved.
I think people wish it was that quick. I think that's why people are susceptible to believe in it, to believe in the Instagram and the YouTube stuff, is like, people want it to just be like a golden ticket where you win the raffle, you win the lottery, and you have this lavish life. Or it could be a case of you use it as a way to hate, to be like, well, he's just got it all, I'm never gonna have what he's had. But people don't want to hear the truth, which is like, it's taken me years to build this. I didn't get paid for a long time. This wasn't the fairy tale you all think it is. There were struggles. There might have been trials and tribulations along the way, and it's because of that I'm successful now, not because it was handed to me on a platter. That's it, guys. That's the end of the episode. Now, we really hope you enjoyed listening to that. We certainly got so much value from it here in the studio, so I can only hope that you did too. If you did get value from this chat, then please show some support to the podcast, help us grow and help us share these kind of conversations, with as many pairs of ears as possible, whether that be sharing it to your social media or just leaving us a review. All of this will be massively, massively appreciated. But for now, we'll see you in the next episode.